Good morning. Thank you for tuning in again this morning as we continue our life and devotional life and life of Jesus. And as we start another Monday morning out with a little bit of Jesus and coffee, we're going to be looking at Matthew chapter 14, verses 22 through 36, and Mark chapter 6, verses 45 through 56 today. And this is where Jesus walks on the water. As we go into this lesson today, I pray that you had a good weekend and a good service yesterday at church. If you wasn't able to go to church, I pray that you was able to find a service that you were could worship at it and hear the truth being preached. This morning we're going to start here in Matthew. And straightway Jesus constrained the disciples to get up into the ship and to go before him into the other side. And he went and he sent the multitude away. And when he had sent the multitudes away, he went up into the mountain apart to pray. And when the evening was come, he was there alone. But the ship was now in the midst of the sea, tossed with waves, for the wind was contrary. And in the fourth watch of the night, Jesus went unto them, walking on the sea. And when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, It is a spirit. And they cried out for fear. And straightway Jesus spake unto them, saying, Be of good cheer, it is I, be not afraid. And Peter answered him and said, Lord, if it be thou, bid me to come thee on the water. And he said, Come. And when Peter was come out of the ship, he walked on the sea to go to Jesus. But when he saw the wind boisterous, he was afraid and began to sink and cried out, saying, Lord, save me. And immediately Jesus stretched forth his hand and caught him and said unto him, O thou little of faith, wherefore didst thou doubt? And when thou were come into the ship, the wind ceased. Then they that were in the ship came and worshipped him, saying, Of a truth, thou art the Son of God. Now we're going to jump over here real quick and read just part of this account in Mark. And this is straightway he constrained the disciples to go into a ship and to go to the other side of the Bethesda, while he sent away the people. And when he had sent them away, he departed into the mountain to pray. And when evening was come, the ship was in the midst of the sea, and he alone on the land. And he saw them toiling and rowing, for the wind was contrary unto them. And about the fourth watch of the night, he came unto them, walking on the sea, and would have passed by them. But they saw him walking on the sea, and they supposed it was a spirit, and cried out. For they all saw him, and were troubled. And immediately he talked with them, and saith, Be of good cheer, it is I, be not afraid. Now we're going to stop there, and the account's just a little bit different there. From there on, it doesn't talk about Peter walking on the sea, but there was a section in here in verse 48 that I wanted to read, so you would see this morning. To set up the scene that they were in, or the condition that they were in, the disciples had just had seen all these miracles that Jesus did, starting with when Jesus calmed the sea. He saw the woman with the issue of blood. They saw the man that had been possessed with demons. They had heard about the man of Bethesda that he healed. They had heard about the daughter that was raised from the dead. They saw him feed 5,000. They heard the messages that were being preached. Peter even saw his own mother-in-law being saved, or not saved, but healed. And they've witnessed all these things. They just saw the 5,000 being fed. And they find themselves back out on the boat again, out in the ocean. Jesus, he's up in the mountain praying. What a great example of our Savior gives us. He goes up in the mountain and prays alone. He's in his ministry, and he's going through his daily life, and he's got a lot of things going on, but he finds time to pray. He finds time to have that communication with his Father, just as we ought to do. The disciples saw all these things, and they're out there in the boat, again out in the sea, and the wind's being contrary, just like life. And right now, life seems to be quite contrary. It's kind of a madhouse in the world today. But the problem is we look at the disciples here and what they were doing again. The first time that they were in the sea, Jesus was asleep in the bottom of the boat, and they had to go wake him up after the ship was starting to fill up with water. Now we find them again out here in the sea. The wind is tossing them back and forth, beating them up again. And what are they doing? They're rowing. They're trying to handle this situation again with man's ability. You know, as we looked at all those examples that I just mentioned a few minutes ago, what we see in those examples is man's inability. We see that the woman with the issue of blood, we see that she was had spent her life savings on trying to find a physician to heal her. Nothing would work. We see the man that was possessed with demons, that had been tied with chains, and the people of the city had tried to control him and help him, but nothing would work. He was living out naked in the tombs of the cemetery where they put the dead people. That's where he was living, because nobody could control him, but God could. We look at the sea that was whenever the disciples were in the sea, and they were too scared to wake up Jesus, but he took care of it. We look at the feeding of the 5,000, and the disciples just saw these little fish and a few 5 loaves of bread, and it's impossible. You know, we can't feed this many people with that, or this little bit of money we have. And Jesus gave thanks for it, broke it, and fed 5,000, and had 12 baskets left over. We're here they are again. They're trying to handle this situation on their own. They're out there in the storm. Now, I'm not saying we're to be lazy and just to give up, but what I'm saying is we're rowing, just as they were rowing, they should have already been seeking their master's help. They should already been praying and asking God to help them, and asking Jesus to go ahead and calm the storm so they could just get to the other side. They were so focused on, just as it was before, just as the woman at the well was so focused on the things that the water that she was there to get, that she didn't see the well right in front of her. You know, she was standing by a hole in the ground, but she was speaking to the well that gave her living water. And she didn't understand that. She didn't see that until Jesus revealed it to him. And here we have the disciples that have saw all these things, that had witnessed all these things, and yet they didn't see that their own master, their own one that they were walking with, Jesus, he had control of all these things. If they would have just reached out to him before the storm got so rough. And you know, a lot of times us as God's children are the same way. We get so focused on the storm and what we're doing, we find it sometimes impossible, or not impossible, but we find it we're so focused and so self-driven that we forget to stop and ask Jesus to help us. We're so busy rowing that, you know, here in Mark, this is the reason why I wanted to read part of Mark too. See, Jesus was walking on the boat. He saw them rowing, and he was going to pass by them. He was just, you know, how many times do we let Jesus pass by? How many times do we let Jesus just go on by because we're so busy rowing and focusing on the things of that we're doing, because the world is being contrary. The world is crazy right now. We're so focused on those things that we let Jesus walk right by, because he was going to. But he said apparently some of them had saw him walking on the water, and instead of recognizing him for Jesus, because they were so focused on rowing and so focused on their abilities, that they didn't even recognize that this was Jesus walking on the water. Now I can imagine what it would have been like to be out there, and it's pitch black dark. All right, so the wind's contrary. You know, most likely there's clouds above. You know it's going to be pitch dark, and they're just trying to row, and they're trying to keep the boat upright and going in the right direction with the waves so it doesn't topple. I mean, all these things are going through their mind. You know, it's not just they're out there rowing like it's a calm day. They've got a guy on the rudder that's turning the ship, and he's trying to keep it angled so that a rogue wave or something doesn't come up and take over the wave. So, I mean, they are physically busy. They are, doing things that can kind of keep their attention off other things. But as they're in the midst of this and they're doing what they're doing, they're rowing, they're trying to keep the ship steered in the right direction. They look over and they finally see Jesus. And instead of recognizing Jesus, it troubles them because they think it's a spirit, and they cried out in fear. But Jesus spoke to them. He says, "Be of good cheer. It is I. Be not afraid." You know, I've heard those words spoke to myself many times, maybe not with a physical ear, but with the spiritual heart, the spiritual ear that I have, that I've heard that many times, where I would be troubled because of a situation. I would be troubled because of things I'm going on, and I would finally stop and recognize Jesus there. I would finally stop and pray for him, and he would just, you know, that peace would come back to you, and that peace that would help us get through those situations. I'm thankful today. But then we see that Peter answered him, and he said, "Lord, if it be thou, bid me to come." You know, as Peter, we know him to be a very impulsive person. As Peter said this, Jesus said, "Come." You can only imagine what Peter must have been thinking. Oh, what was I thinking? Stupid, why did I say that? Now he's got to get out the boat. He's sitting there, he's like, all right. So he gets out of the boat. He's going back in his mind. And he's reflecting on all the experiences and miracles that he saw, and the faith that all these people had that were healed. So he's thinking, okay, if this is Jesus, I'm going to get out and walk to Jesus. And he had faith in Jesus. So, you know, can you imagine what it was like the first time that he stepped his leg out over that boat? I mean, he had to climb out of the boat. He had to commit. That, just as we talked about the other day, you know, we have to commit. We have to not just make a mental decision to live, but we have to commit with our heart, mind, and soul to Jesus. We have to commit our life to him. He had to step out, put that leg over the boat. I'm sure that old heart was beating, just like whenever you got to testify at church or go talk to somebody. He was nervous. I'm sure he was white knuckling the side of that boat before he took the first step. But he took the step. He stepped out and he started to walk. And he's focused on Jesus. Then it says that he started to see the waves around about him, and he started to sink. Okay, let's just go through the mind of Peter here. So he's focused on Jesus, right? The waves are going up and down because the storm hasn't calmed yet, because it says that the storm didn't calm until Jesus got into the boat. So he's walking, you know, he's going up and down these waves. You know, you look out, you think about a wave, you know, when on the horizon, you see Jesus standing there, but as those waves are coming up and down, he was going to lose focus of him every now and then. He was going to lose a focus of Jesus out in front of him. So you think about that and being in a sea, and you can see how that he lost focus so easy. And that's what the world wants us to do. The world's got waves. You know, it's this contrary world that we live in. It's full of sin. It's got waves going up and down, and it's going to take every now and then we're going to lose focus of Jesus, and it's going to come right back into focus. But as I was trying to get into the mindset of Peter here, and he's a very impulsive, self-willed person. So he stepped out of the boat and he takes a few steps and he's walking, and Jesus goes out of sight for a second. And he's looking around. He's thinking, "I'm walking on the sea. I'm walking on water." That's his first mistake. He recognized he was seeing himself as having the ability. I am walking on water, and he lost focus of Jesus, and he started to sink. And that's what happens to us. We step out of the boat and we start walking and we think, "I've got this. I've got this life. I can handle this." And we lose focus of Jesus because of the sin and the things in the world that are clouding the view. And then what happens? As soon as we lose focus, as soon as we think, "I've got this," we start to sink. And it doesn't take much, does it? It doesn't take long, because it says, you know, it said the wind was boisterous, and he began to sink. And I can see Peter here. He's walking on water, and he looks at himself for the ability. He takes his eyes off of Jesus and he starts to sink. I'm sure it wasn't just a gradual process. I'm sure that he just dropped out like somebody hitting one of those dunking booths that hit the target and that person fell. I bet you that's my picture of what happened. He's walking along. He thinks he's got this. He's walking on water like Jesus. And all of a sudden, bam, he's about this high, and he starts, he's screaming out to the Lord, "Save me. Lord, save me." This is one of, if you look at the stories, you look at events and the examples of when Jesus healed people, this is very important that you look at this and listen to this. Immediately, Immediately, that woman with the issue of blood was healed. Immediately, when Jesus said, go, those demons were out of the man. Immediately, whenever Jesus speaks, it happens immediately. Jesus stretched forth his hand and caught him and said, O thou little of faith, wherefore didst thou doubt? Why did you doubt? Why did you take your eyes off of me? But Jesus was there immediately to reach down his hand and to pull up Peter out of the water. So, that's the way it is with us. When we find ourselves in those situations and we finally recognize Jesus there and we call out to him, that peace is there immediately. That help that we need is there immediately. We might not see it because we're looking with the limited eyes of man, the limited carnal eyes of man, when we need to be focusing on the possibilities of what God can do instead of looking on the impossible ability of man. And then Jesus went and pulled up Peter, and they went and they climbed back into the boat, and the calm stormed. The storm calmed, The storm ceased, the wind ceased, and it was calm. And they that were in the ship worshipped him and said, of a truth, thou art the Son of God. Why does it take a storm? Why does it take sinking in the water? Why does it take a crisis for us to recognize Jesus as the Son of God? We are crisis Christians. We need to stop being these crisis worshipers and be Christ worshipers. If we would be Christ worshipers instead of crisis worshipers, all these things would seem a little bit different to us. Our life wouldn't get so bogged down with the things of this world. We need to stop looking at the crises of this world and look to the Christ of this world, Jesus, the one and only Christ. Not the crises that are going on. And that's what we see here in all these examples. We know Peter saw Christ here. He stepped out and he went out on faith. It was his first step as solid, besides going out and preaching as Jesus sent him out to go and teach and preach. And this was a big monumental step in Peter's life. He was stepping out into the sea. He was stepping out into the impossibilities of man, but with the possibilities of God. He was stepping out on that faith. He was going to Jesus, but he's human just like we are. And he thought to himself, I'm walking on water. And the waves took his view off of Jesus for a minute, and he started to sink. And Jesus immediately came when he called out to him, save me. What if they'd have called out, save me, before they ever started to fight this storm, just as they did whenever Jesus was asleep in the storm? If they saw the clouds coming, wake up the master, hey, go ahead and take care of this, Lord, before it gets here. Why didn't they just wake him up then instead of fighting and rowing it out this whole time? Why didn't they just go ahead and let him take care of it? Well, we're human. We think we can handle it. These were a lot of fishermen. I'm sure Matthew was back there, puking his guts out, screaming, would you please get us out of here? Because he was a tax collector. Peter, James, and Andrew, and I think Philip, they were all fishermen. They were used to being in the sea, but these other disciples, not so much. So let's not think that we can handle these things just because we've got life experiences. Let's listen, let's call out to Jesus before it gets that bad. And when we step out on faith and we start to walk, let's not think we're walking on our own ability, but let's look at Jesus for our ability, because that's where it truly comes from. Our ability is coming from Jesus, not ourselves. Even though the things of life are coming up and down and taking our view off of Jesus, whenever we refocus, he's going to come right back. He's going to be there. Let's remember that and not lose focus of that today as we go into our week this week, and to keep our focus on Jesus. And when we step out on faith, let's not think of our own ability and the waves around us. Let's focus on Jesus. Recognize the waves. They're still there. Recognize the sin that's going to be there in the world. But give the credit where the credit is due, and that's Jesus. I appreciate you listening to me today. I appreciate your prayers, and we'll the next few days here, there's a lot that's going on in the disciples' lives and Jesus's life here, so that we've got a lot to go over. And the next, we've got several chapters left, and I'm excited to learn more about Jesus, because that's what this world needs, is more Jesus. This world needs more Jesus, and the only Jesus that they're going to see is what we take out to the world and present to them. I appreciate you listening again, and hope you have a great day. God bless you and love you.